Trump could not give about anyone else's life. It's all about what satisfies his narcissistic thirst. You absolutely know he has no idea what he's doing, and that his guiding light is his own ego and not the best interest of the United States of America.
If he doesn't, I'll let you know. I'll come back and I'll hit him hard, okay? No?
George Conway just dropped a verbal nuke so savage, even Melania blinked twice. That's right, Trump's least favorite lawyer just lit up the whole MAGA mansion like a Christmas tree on fire. But wait, this wasn't just political. Oh no, George went personal. We're talking roast levels previously unseen outside a Comedy Central special. So buckle up, because this isn't just drama, it's high-stakes reality TV. Starring a president and a very fed-up lawyer.
I think everybody overthinks this guy. There's no strategy. There is no thought. And the brand is just him. He lives in this world where there's just him. Okay?
But it's not just him, George. It's a hell of a lot of people out there who've gotten sucked up into this thing and that are perpetuating
I agree with
that brand.
I'm talking about in his mind.
Okay.
None of us matter. Those people don't matter. They're not real people. He doesn't care what happens to them.
Once upon a time, in the strange, bloated kingdom of American politics, there was a man who did the unthinkable. He went to war with Donald Trump, using nothing but legal knowledge, razor-sharp sarcasm, and the ultimate weapon, marriage. Proximity to Kellyanne Conway. George Conway didn't just burn the MAGA house down, he walked in with a Harvard law degree, a briefcase full of receipts, and the look of a man who's read too many unhinged tweets before his morning coffee.
He can't help himself but emotionally react to things. One of the things that he's a narcissistic sociopath. That's the thing everyone has to kind of get used to. It's the reason why you cannot normalize him. You cannot treat him like a normal human being, because he's not. He is unwell. And that's why he can't follow. He's not going to be able to follow his lawyer's directions. That's why, he played right into the plaintiff's hands in the E. Jean Carroll case. They're trying to show basically he's a jerk.
If you're enjoying this video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. This wasn't just a petty Twitter spat. Oh no. This was a cold, methodical dismantling of Trumpism, brick by lying brick. And let's be clear, this wasn't some blue-harmed activist from Portland shouting at a cloud. This was a suit-wearing Federalist Society card-carrying conservative who once probably owned a constitution and actually read it. George Conway's transformation was as dramatic as a Real Housewives season finale.
You don't want to diagnose him, but I think if you look at the diagnostic criteria for narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder, he fits every single one of them. It's like the criteria were made to describe him. And I think what we saw with this tweet yesterday is that last final collapse of Donald Trump's mental state. I mean, you think about it, those were like 50, 60, 70,000 people in the aggregate in five rallies in different states. That's loopier than saying that the moon landings were staged, because there were tens of thousands of people were there. To think that is crazy, and to try to sell it to people.
1 minute, he's the respected lawyer married to Trump's most loyal hype woman, Kellyanne. Next, he's on national television diagnosing Trump like he's doing rounds at Walter Reed. Honestly, if Trump was a legal case, George would have filed, argued, and sentenced him before breakfast.
He gets off on that, and then he gets bored with what he said yesterday. And of course, he doesn't necessarily remember what he says or care what he says yesterday. So tomorrow's going to be something else. And so if you take the number of days between now and January 20th, 2029.
So long from now.
One of these days, there's going to be a red button that's going to get pressed randomly.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that's the problem with him, is that you don't know what you're going to get random things from one day to the next.
Problem with him.
And one of those things is going to be bad.
And the best part, George doesn't yell. He doesn't rant. He calmly eviscerates. Surgical. Like watching someone carve a Thanksgiving turkey with a scalpel while discussing the Constitution's finer points. It's not just personal for George, it's poetic and ironic, like the Titanic being sunk by one of its own passengers because he couldn't stand the captain's hair. Now, add to this flaming casserole of chaos one Melania Trump, the most reluctant first lady in American history, the woman whose face could launch 1,000 memes, but apparently not a single sincere emotion. Melania has often glided through scandals like a Roomba on low battery, slow, silent, and mostly avoiding walls. But George saw through the mystery. He didn't buy the whole I don't care minimalist aesthetic. He picked it apart like a prosecutor cross-examining a confused witness in Dior. While the world argued about whether Melania blinked twice for help or simply short-circuited, George was out here dragging both her and Donnie through the legal and moral mud. And the internet rejoiced. Because let's face it, watching someone inside the house call the fire department is a rare treat, especially when the arsonist is still tweeting from the second floor.
Have books talking about, Joe Biden not being alert 12 hours a day. It's like, okay, but he's not a sociopath and he's not going to blow anything up randomly. And he's, we can talk about almost everything else except the fact that this guy is a deranged moron. And
right.
So, the problem is that we have completely normalized this to the point where we can't deal with it. We can't deal with the fact that the rest of the world can't, they can do that. Their leaders.
George started landing punches so consistently, you had to wonder if Trump regretted ever hiring Kellyanne, or if Kellyanne regretted introducing George to politics, because every single time Trump raged in all caps, you could bet George was somewhere sipping coffee and loading another thread. And George didn't go for the cheap shots. He didn't mock Trump's diet or Melania's Instagram energy. No, he went for the structural damage. He pointed to the cracks in their version of reality. He questioned the legitimacy, the motivations, the sheer absurdity of it all. Like someone calmly reminding the town that the emperor isn't just naked, he's also holding a fake diploma. And what makes it deliciously ironic? George is the ultimate insider. He's not an outsider looking in. He's the guy who was literally married to Trump, world's high priestess. This isn't some angry liberal ranting into the void. This is the husband of Kellyanne freaking Conway telling us repeatedly that Trump is unfit, unstable, and completely uninterested in anything that doesn't involve applause or flattery. Even better, George has a lawyer's brain and a comedian's sense of timing. Every time Trump made a legal move that screamed desperation, whether it was delaying court dates, playing the victim, or yelling witch hunt like it was a limited edition slogan tee, George was there, breaking it down like a patient dad explaining taxes to a goldfish.
Donald Trump seeks revenge against not only just individuals like Mark Elias, and, Andrew Weissman, and all the people he's named in these executive orders. He seeks vengeance against the entire judicial system, the entire legal system, because it tried to hold him to account. And he seeks, because he does not want to be held accountable to the judicial system, he seeks essentially to undermine and destroy it. And the way he has been doing that is, first of all, by violating as many laws and constitutional provisions as he can possibly violate in a very...
He'd casually toss out comments implying Trump was running from accountability like it was cardio. He'd note that Melania's carefully curated silence wasn't elegance, but PR strategy on autopilot. And when the Trump team tried to act shocked about indictments or investigations, George would remind everyone, ever so gently, that consequences are not left-wing hoaxes. They're the adult part of politics. Now, did Trump clap back? Oh, of course. Loudly, frequently, incoherently. Picture a raccoon with a megaphone trying to argue with a courtroom stenographer. It never landed. It never made sense. Trump would post 5-paragraph tantrums while George responded with 3 lines that felt like a Supreme Court ruling delivered in deadpan. Melania? Well, she did what she does best, disappear into luxury, occasionally reappearing like a hologram to wave, smile, or remind us she still exists. George, on the other hand, stayed in the spotlight, armed with facts, sarcasm, and the look of someone who knew he was ruining brunches at Mar-a-Lago. Even Kellyanne looked like she needed an emotional translator. Publicly praising Trump while privately attending book signings where her husband just compared the president to a malfunctioning vending machine. You know it's bad when your marriage becomes the ultimate political metaphor. Loyalty on one side, logic on the other, with awkward silence in the middle.
after Donald Trump won in 2016. Your name was floated as someone who might work in his administration. You turned that down, and
I was offered the job of head of the Civil Division of the Department of Justice. And I filled out all the forms. They ran my background check, and I was interviewing people who were going to work underneath me. I was sort of far along there, and then I just started having this queasy feeling like I don't really want to work in this administration, because what I saw was a shit show and a dumpster fire.
And here's where it gets really spicy. George Conway wasn't just firing off snarky tweets. He was laying down legal commentary with surgical accuracy. During Trump's many courtroom escapades, whether they involved hush money, classified documents, or just really bad decisions, George popped up like a legal analyst on espresso. He dissected each move with lawyerly glee, pointing out flaws that made even casual observers wonder how this man ever ran a country. While Trump claimed victimhood louder than a toddler denied a Happy Meal, George was calmly outlining why that tantrum wouldn't hold up in court. He also had no patience for performative outrage. Every time Trump played the martyr card, George shuffled the deck and called his bluff. And Melania? Let's just say George made it clear that if elegance was silence, then she was practically royalty. A silent, disengaged, mildly baffled royalty. One of George's pet peeves? Hypocrisy, especially the Trump kind, where law and order meant law for you, order for me. And no, George didn't let Melania off the hook either. He highlighted her selective appearances, her conveniently timed absences, and her vague attempts at moral leadership that felt like a PR firm on autopilot.
Sociopath, and one of the things about sociopath is that they don't plan, they don't think, they just emote, and they're impulsive, and they act on their whims and impulses, and the last person who talked to them. And that's why you have, and then also they have the power, they love the power, the feeling of power that they get when they say, I'm turning this on, I'm turning this off, I'm turning the lights out, I'm turning the lights on, I'm raising tariffs, I'm lowering tariffs, I'm telling everybody in Tehran, 10 million people to evacuate, I'm telling them they're safe for now.
Trump fans called George bitter. Trump himself called him irrelevant, but none of it mattered because George kept winning the one battle Trump fears the most, the one based on facts. George didn't need rallies, slogans, or crowds. He needed Wi-Fi and legal precedent, and somehow that cut deeper than 1,000 Sleepy Joe memes. What made it even juicier was how George turned Trump's every defensive move into ammunition. When Trump bragged about immunity, George listed the legal exceptions. When Trump whined about being targeted, George reminded everyone of the difference between persecution and prosecution. And when Trump supporters screamed deep state, George calmly pointed to court filings and said, nope, just due process. And let's talk receipts. George kept them like a grudge. Every lie, every contradiction, every delusional press conference, he remembered them all. It was like watching a historian with a petty streak compile a burn book in real time. Except this burn book had footnotes and timestamps. As for Melania, George never went crude. He went clinical, observing her absence, her detachment, her uncanny ability to ghost the nation while technically still being First Lady, who implied, without ever shouting it, that being decorative is not the same as being dignified. And suddenly, all those carefully curated photos and icy glares looked less chic and more calculated.
Terry Schreckman wants to know from you, George, do you expect Trump to target you and other staff of the Lincoln Project? And if so, do you have a defense plan?
I don't have a defense plan other than whatever he pulls up is going to be meritless. My finances are simple. It won't, I don't fear him. And I think one of the things that that people don't quite understand about Trump, but they really should, is the fact that he's a bully and he wants to pick on people who won't fight back.
Now here's the kicker. George Conway didn't need to destroy Trump. He chose to. And he did it in a way that made everyone else look like they were playing checkers, while he was arguing in front of the Supreme Court with one hand tied behind his back. Trump hates losing. But what he hates more? Losing to someone on the inside. Someone who knows where the skeletons are buried because he helped pay for the damn shovel. George didn't come from MSNBC. He came from the heart of conservative legal circles, which makes his takedown 10 times more humiliating. And don't forget, George never shouted, never foamed at the mouth, just calmly delivered scathing commentary that hit harder than a mic drop in a monastery. It was brutal, relentless, and elegantly petty, like watching a legal thriller where the villain gets owned with bullet points. Trump lashed out, of course. He always does. But George had already won, because for every angry rant, George had logic. For every insult, he had receipts. And for every awkward photo of Melania, he had questions no one in the Trump world wanted to answer. Why does it sting more when George Conway takes the mic? Because unlike MSNBC pundits or blue-check Twitter warriors, George isn't shouting from outside the gates. He used to live in the damn castle. He's not some radical lefty frothing at the mouth about Russian P-tapes. He's the buttoned-up conservative legal scholar who once fit the GOP mold so well, you could have shipped him off to Federalist Society fantasy camp and no one would blink. So when he calls Trump unfit, unstable, and legally radioactive, it's not betrayal, it's a leak from the inside. And Trump hates leaks more than he hates kale.
For that tweet was the decision of the United States Court of International Trade striking down the tariffs.
Yeah.
An unimpeachable, unobjectionable decision. I read it. It looks like it well-reasoned to me. But there was one Trump judge on there. There was one Reagan judge. Like she must be really old, Jane Rustani. I mean, I think she was on that court when I was clerking across the street for the Second Circuit in 1987. And then there was, I think, an Obama judge. He was mad that there was a Trump judge on that panel. And that's what provoked that. But in reality, I believe that he's had it out for the Federalist Society ever since the coup, ever since January 6th, ever since the post.
Let's not forget, this man is married to Kellyanne Conway. Yes, the same Kellyanne who gave us alternative facts and once tried to Jedi mind trick us into believing Trump didn't say what he just said on tape. So when George throws shade, it hits different. It's like watching your childhood pastor tweet, "I always knew my cousin was trash." You can't not listen. George brings not only legal insight, but the kind of awkward insider knowledge that makes Thanksgiving dinner feel like a hostage negotiation. And the best part, George speaks Trump's native tongue, power, ego, and legal disaster. While most critics try to take Trump down with dignity and facts, George grabs the legal sledgehammer and swings it like Thor with a bar license. He doesn't beg for justice, he drafts it. Footnotes included. Naturally, Trump can't handle it. So what happens? We get the classic all-caps rage tweet storm. George is a stone-cold loser. Beautiful, predictable, poetic. It's the sound of a man who just got dunked on by someone with a JD and no chill. And then there's Melania, still MIA. Not a peep, not a post. She's treating this entire saga like it's not her circus, not her monkeys. But her silence only fuels the intrigue. Does she agree with George? Is she just trying to outlast the madness until the next Tiffany's box arrives? Nobody knows, but the vacuum is loud.
As we mentioned, the former president's lawyers, they're going to argue tomorrow that his actions after the 2020 election were all covered by presidential immunity. How do you think this is going to play out?
I don't think it's going to play out very well for the former president tomorrow. I think one of the basic guidelines I always had in watching arguments of any sort in court, and particularly appellate arguments, is the side that gets the most questions is probably the one going to get the short end of the stick in the ruling at the end. And I anticipate that most of the questions are going to be directed at Trump and his lawyers on how you can possibly justify giving a president who is sworn to uphold the laws of the United States and the Constitution of the United States, how that person can be.
And George, he's not done. He's writing essays, popping up on panels, making sarcastic quips that sound like they were carved by a judge with a grudge. Every Trump indictment, George is there with popcorn, a PDF, and a smirk. Here's the kicker. He's proof that Trumpism can't hide behind partisanship forever. When the people who built the machine start pulling out the wires, you know the gears are grinding. You don't need a Bernie sticker to take down Trump, just receipts, rage, and a really uncomfortable marriage. By the time George was done, Trump looked less like a titan and more like a particularly loud HOA president with delusions of grandeur. Melania looked like someone who'd rather be anywhere else. And Kellyanne? Well, she probably wished her husband had taken up pottery instead of political demolition. In the end, George Conway didn't just critique Trump, he exposed him with surgical precision, relentless sarcasm, and the devastating power of being right. and somehow he made constitutional law feel like stand-up comedy. So if you're wondering who really got the last laugh, it wasn't Trump, it wasn't Melania, it was the quiet guy with the facts, the receipts, and a very public vendetta.